It's a wonderful day to be here. I can see we have 10 participants. So maybe when we get up to, say, 15, 20, then we'll just kick off. I think it's wonderful to start now. We can't keep waiting. For the sake of those that came early and want to do other things, it won't be nice to keep everybody waiting. So we kickstart immediately, and every other person would join us as we roll. Welcome once again. I am super excited to have you here today on this very wonderful webinar, 6 new ways on how to overcome painful conflicts in marriage. And you know, it's such a beautiful day, and I am honored by your presence. I'm super honored by your presence. For you all to have made it here today, I celebrate you in a tremendous way. There's this ritual I like to observe before we start, just to push up your dopamine. It's true, I wanted us to be more than this number before we start, but seeing that we have a lot to cover today and time is fast spent, it would be nice to dive right in. So I want everybody to stand up and shake your body a bit. If you can all stand up, please turn on your videos just for 2 minutes, 1 minute. Please turn on your videos. Can you please, thank you, Victoria, I see you. Thank you so much. Please turn on your videos. Please turn on your videos. Hello, are you shake our bodies a bit? If you can stand up, wonderful. If not, just shake as you sit. As we sing this song along, the credit of this song goes to Chike and Simi, and I see it closely related to family. I see it closely related to purpose, and that is what we are here to do today. So, when I kiss my baby, come through, running to you. I'll be running to you. I'll be running to you, running to you. I'll be running, baby, running to you, running to you. I'll be running to you, running to you. I'll be running to you, running to you. Let's stop here. Hello, my name is Chinenwobi, the founder and lead coach of Serena's Consult, and also the convener of this webinar, 6 new ways of overcoming painful conflict in marriage. It is so exciting to have you all here today, and I believe and bet that you've had a wonderful day. At my end here, it's evening on Wednesday, and Wednesday evenings are usually such great time for those who are with their family to catch up with family, and some of them to check up on a couple of other things just because it's midweek. Today, we are going to be looking at something very important, which is marriage, as we look at the 6 new ways to overcome problems of conflict in marriage. I want to share this quickly because it is something that is key and something very important. I know that for some people, this might be the first time or the first class that you're signing up where you're going to be looking at 6 important issues around marriage, especially when it has to do with conflict resolution. And this is a huge challenge that marriages are facing today. I mean, we all know about the rate of divorce and other problems in marriage, including death, such that a lot of young people are finding it very difficult and scared of taking the decision of going into marriage. And even the married ones are wanting out. Some couple of years back, I was speaking with a young guy, and he said to me, I've not found the right person. In fact, I'm scared to make the decision. That is the situation that marriage has found itself in currently, and this is a sad situation. Unresolved painful conflicts leads to a lot of health issues, including mental issues like depression, and it produces a sense of meaninglessness. You know what? A lot of people are already beginning to get tired of all the learnings they've gotten from diverse sources. Yet, with all of that, the society is still unable to fix the institution of marriage, especially when it comes to the area of conflict resolution. Today, we are going to be sharing something entirely different, something different from what a lot of people who you may have listened to or attended their training have said. If you have attended a lot of trainings, you would realize that there are just key things you would always hear in most trainings. You hear things like, oh, first, before you get married, you need to attend the premarital class. You need to check out the background of your supposed to be partner. You need to understand their upbringing. I hear a lot of people say this over and over again. And I have heard people also tell me that they've read all sorts of books with regards to marriage. They've read so many books, the 5 love language, and all of them, and yet they struggle with resolving conflict. Those are the things we all hear again and again from coaches, pastors, counselors, and their lives. But the problem is that when conflict shows up, we tend to forget all those learnings. All those learnings disappear. The big question and the key question here is why? Why do they disappear? And this is because marriage is more of practicals than theory. That is why for today, I am going to be sharing something entirely different. So maybe if you have heard, it is possible you've heard of it before, or maybe not, but it is going to be so practicable such that a lot of marriages would be healed today. So we are going to start now if you are ready. Because I am very ready and super excited. I would love to introduce quickly before we start a super and a powerful guest speaker who will be with us on this journey today and will be joining us in this amazing time. Someone who is super amazing, someone who I respect and value a lot, somebody who is selfless to the core, in the person of Mr. Enahoro Okai. And Enahoro Okai is the managing director of Pulse Factory, a West African partner of 6 Seconds Emotional Intelligence with the USA. He is also the co-founder of Global SAT, a Nigerian delivery partner to the KPI Institute of Australia. And he is the lead founder of Simeon Pivot Resources and Pulse Factory. He's currently the president of the Life Coaches Association of Nigeria and he sustains an unwavering commitment to helping people rise and achieve their purpose in life. That is why it has gained him the title, Mr. Leverage. He will come in soon to speak to us on the aspect of conflict resolution when it has to do with emotional intelligence, as it relates to emotional intelligence. But before he comes, I will need you to get a writing material if you have not done that already. Clear all distractions as we get set. Fasten your seatbelts. This particular jet is about to take off. So quickly in the chat box, I want you to type one intention or one expectation you have from today's session. What do you want to take away from this webinar after your stay here? Quickly type in something in the chat box. I want to see it. Set your intention quickly and we'll get going from there. Quickly type in the chat box one intention, one thing, one experience, your expectation from today's session. Quickly type that in and then we take it from there. As you do that, I would just share my screen with you. I would quickly share my screen and so we're here today to look at 6 ways to overcome painful conflict in marriage. You're welcome to A Serene Living. The learning objectives for today is that we're going to learn what marriage is and why. Why really are you married? What gives rise to conflict in marriage and what can modify it? What are the consequences of conflict? Then, most importantly, we are going to discover 6 new ways to overcome painful conflict in marriage. These 6 new ways, we will be looking at marriage dynamics, communication blueprint, boundary equations, expectation matrix, personality clash, and team sense. These are the 6 new ways we would be looking at today when it has to do with conflict resolution. So at this point, I would pause and bring in the speaker, the guest speaker for today, in the person of Mr. Enahoro Ohai, who would be speaking with us today. He will go first, then we'll take it from there. And that's because he has a very important commitment for today, but he has granted us this honor to be here. So you're very, very welcome. You're welcome, sir. You're welcome, Mr. Enahoro.
Good evening.
You can take over.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
All right, I feel the energy in the house. Good evening, Chine.
Welcome, sir. You're welcome.
Good to be here. And I welcome everybody that's part of this. Chine is one of the fastest growing coaches around that combines emotional intelligence and family engineering, you know, marital issues, solutions, and all of that. Powerful coach. So let's appreciate Chineye. I celebrate you. It's a hard work you're doing, and I'd love to keep encouraging you to move far, continue what you're doing. It's not an easy work to sort people out. So thank you, Chineye, for the work that you do. Thank you. Don't relent, because all the people here need you. We all need you, right?
Yeah.
I'm excited. I'm excited to be here. I just have barely 10, 15 minutes to spend with you. But I'd love everybody to quickly do something. What is that thing that you have been telling your spouse to stop doing for a very long time? And you have spoken to them, fought with them, quarreled with them, but they're still doing it. Can you go to the chat box and put it there? Let's be vulnerable. Anything about marriage requires vulnerability. What is that thing that you've been talking to your spouse about? Advising your spouse, you've quarreled with your spouse, you've done everything to stop your spouse from doing that thing, but the person is still doing it. Your spouse is still doing it. Can you go to the chat box to put it? No. Can you do that?
Yeah. Please go to the chat box. Go to the chat box. If you need solution today, solution is here. Solution is here. Go to the chat box and type in that one thing that you've been having issues with and you need your spouse to stop.
You've told them, you've quarreled with them, you've advised them, you've seen your pastor, counselor, everything, but they're still doing it. What is that thing? What do we have in the chat?
So someone says careless investment.
Okay. Another person
says communication.
Yeah, another person says abuse. All right. Excess shouting. Yeah. Nice. All right, I want to turn the table around. What is that thing that your spouse has been telling you to stop? You that are here all these years. Your staff has complained. I mean, did I say staff? Sorry, I'm a businessman. Your spouse has complained and complained, told you to stop it, reported you to several people and you are still doing it. Can you be vulnerable enough to write it out? About you, something your own spouse has been complaining about and been telling you to stop all this while, but somehow you've not stopped it. You're still doing it. Let's see if anybody is able to say something. None. Yeah, what about you, Basi? What is that thing your spouse has been telling you to stop, to change, but you've not been able to do it? You just find yourself doing it again and again. Thank you, Walter. Just have one more. Getting angry. Okay. What you would notice is that somehow everybody wants everybody to change. And because that is difficult, eventually we find ourselves in conflict situation, right? A lot of times when we find ourselves in conflict situation, what has happened would be that there is something that we want the other person to stop doing that they are not stopping. Or there's something that the other person wants us to stop doing and that we are not stopping. And the big question is, how long do you think, and I'm asking everybody now, how long do you think this situation would continue to happen? How long? How long do you think it will continue to happen? How long? Who can tell me? These issues that we're talking about that creates conflict eventually, how long do you think they will continue to happen? How long? Who can help me? What do you think? Emmanuel, what do you think? Victoria, what do you think? Chichi, what do you think? Naji, what do you think? Basi, what do you think? How long? I feel to be as financially intelligent as he is. I'm always reluctant since I believe. Thank you, Walter. Walter says, if it's not done now, it may continue forever. Yeah, that sounds like something has to be done now. Thank you, Walter. Who else? How long do you think this will continue for? You've been telling them, thank you, Ifeoma. Thank you, Ifeoma, as long as the marriage exists. So with that, I'm going to write on those two. If not treated, I don't know how long. The question is, you've been treating it. Has it been treated? That's a bigger question. Victoria, has it been treated? It doesn't sound like a good news. I've dealt with a lot of couples. I've helped a lot of couples. And the experience that I've seen is that most of us are not going to change. The authority newspaper here. Oh, okay, great. Most of us are not going to change. Let me tell you how people change in this life. People change by jolts of events and jolts of situations. Something will happen, and then somebody will realize something. And when they realize, they will feel sober, and then they would then make a decision to change. Until that person experiences their own jolt that will bring about a sober reflection, most times we remain the same. Nobody loves to be changed. Nobody. And so, if this is a true premise and has always been, then the solution to marital conflict can never be to change the other person.
for every couple that I work with that are having marital issues, it comes down to one thing. I want that person to change, and the person is not changing, and I cannot take it. And as far as that's the foundation, if you don't know how to do something else apart from changing your spouse, then you're going to have conflict for a very, very, very long time. And as you continue to have conflict for a very long time, you're not going to enjoy the marriage. And for you, life would be a terrible place because there's going to be constant conflict, which will bring about constant sadness and frustration. And then you would not have a good marriage. So the first thing that is very deep, right? Very, very deep, that I need you to take in my session. You know, it's very short. And Chinenye will then ride on it. The very thing I want you to take away is that I can't change the other person. I might only be able to influence the other person. Can I repeat that? I can't change the other person. I might, and I use might intentionally, I might only be able to influence the other person. So where does this keep us? This brings to us a self-responsibility to find personal happiness. First, can I shock you? Your spouse does not have the responsibility to create your happiness. Your spouse does not have the responsibility. If they make you happy, great one. But it is not their job description. If you don't know how to be, if you didn't know how to be happy by yourself before marriage, then it's going to be difficult for you to learn how to be happy by yourself. So, if you've learned anything right now, the first question is, how can I learn in the middle of all that will happen to me? You see, conflict in marriage is just like several other issues in life, right? Like Nigeria issues, like issues with your boss in the office. The only difference is that you live with this person inside the house all the time. So the first question here is, how can I, under the premise of the fact that I can't change anyone, and I might not be able to influence them, or I might be able to influence them, the big question you should ask yourself, and every time I sit with a woman who has constant complaint about the husband, and the husband refuses to come for therapy, and she needs to find happiness, she needs to find conflict, the first thing is to stop conflicting with yourself. Stop conflicting with yourself. Once there's no more conflict here, inside the soul, inside the body, once there's no more conflict there, you have started a great journey. Every other thing that Chinenye is going to teach you would ride on it. But the first thing is, irrespective of what my spouse is doing wrongly, that is creating conflicts, I should not forget that there's a tendency that my spouse would not change. And so the big question is, how do I first start a journey of not having conflict within, irrespective of what is happening without? And the first place to go to do that is to begin to understand your own likes and your dislikes, your preferences and your prejudices. And with all of that, I mean your own values. You need to sit down and ask yourself, what are the things that I like and the things that I don't like? When you are aware of them, right? Ask yourself, how can I live with somebody who continues to do the thing that I don't like? Before I start trying to influence the person and start trying to solve the person, how can I live peacefully? Seeing my spouse doing something wrong, I don't like it, but I can still sustain peace within me, within this person. That's the first journey I want all of you to start. And that means you would hear within you that these are my likes and my dislikes, not their likes and their dislikes. Can I repeat that? You must first learn to understand that your likes and your dislikes are totally different from the likes and the dislikes of your spouse. That your preferences are not your spouse's preferences, and your prejudices are not your spouse's prejudices. What I'm trying to say is to first accept them for who they are. First, before you can influence anybody, you would first accept the person. How can you influence somebody that you have not accepted? How can? It is almost practically impossible. Before you can change me, you must first accept me for who I am. Accept me with my strength, accept me with my weakness, accept me for who I am before you can even have an idea to change me. So if anybody was taking notes, I've said a lot of things in a short minute. I would like to hand over to Chine, but let me come back to what I've said, which is the first one. There are certain things that even your spouse wants you to change that you have not changed, and there are certain things that you want your spouse to change that is almost difficult for them to change. It means that we will not be able to change the other person, most likely. We can only influence the other person. Number one. Number two, in order to find peace and remove conflict, you must first find peace within yourself. And to find peace within yourself, you must understand that all your preferences and your prejudices are your own, not for the other person. Once you can find peace within, irrespective of what is happening without, then it's going to be easy to do everything that Chinenye is going to be telling you. I hope that short time is impactful enough. I'm excited to be here, and I hand you over all to Chinenye. Chinenye, thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.
And then you can write.
Thank you so much for doing us this honor. I know you would have loved to stay longer, but you have to rush to somewhere.
Yes.
That I'm fully aware of.
I have.
Thank you so much. It has been so impactful, and there are takeaways from it. And for those who would implement it in addition with what we'll be learning today, I believe their marriages will be good for it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Bye for
Enjoy
now.
your session.
Thank
Bye.
you. Yeah, bye. Okay, so we are back. We are back, and that was just a short session with Mr. Enahoro, the president of the Life Coaches Association. So we dive right into our own session, and I would be sharing the screen just now, and we'll kickstart from there as we do not have ample time again. So we'll just kickstart from there. Share screen, just give me a little time to do that. Yes, I believe you can see my screen now. Can you see my screen? Hello, can someone respond so that I know I'm not the only one here? Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see your screen.
Okay, thank you, thank you for that. So we're going right in. You're welcome to Serena. We've looked at the objectives for today, and we're diving right in, overcoming painful conflicts in marriage. Conflict arises when there is a refusal to accept apology. Or, please, can you all mute your mic? Stella Maris, can you help us mute your mic? Thank you. Sir, when there is a refusal to accept apology, or when the offender refuses to accept that he or she is wrong. Another situation that can make conflicts to arise is if there's a non-alignment of opinion. We might wonder, why is it important to talk about this subject? Painful conflict. A lot of marriages are going through serious problems as we speak. And according to research at the world level, the proportion of adults within the age of 35 to 39 who are divorced or separated has doubled since the pandemic, passing from 2% as it were in 1999 to 4% now in the 2020s. A research conducted by the United Nations, which also was elaborated by the World Meter on Population, shows us this. It might sound as if 2%, 4% is small, but listen to this. The World Meter on Population estimated that the entire world have about 7.9 billion people. And that is to say, with this 4%, 369 million people within the age ranges of 35 to 39 only are divorced. Only 35 to 39. Now, that is not inclusive of other age brackets. And you will agree with me that this is very scary. This is what many people are currently facing, resulting to a lot of poor self-esteem, depression, low productivity, divorce, death, and even national crisis. You may wonder, why? Why should we look at this issue? Who should initiate communication when conflict arises in a home? This is a quick question that many couples struggle with. You know, who would do the apology? Who would speak first? And I would say you don't need to get confused, because the people to influence communication or to initiate communication is either the peacemaker or the peace dweller. If you're wondering what peacemaker and peace dweller is, just follow me on this ride. The peacemaker is the spouse who initiates peace in marriage, even when he or she knows that they are right or wrong. It doesn't matter. They are the ones that initiate peace. They are very uncomfortable with conflict. And the peace dwellers are those who rarely apologizes, even when they know they are wrong. This can be a learned trait, it can be due to personality or even trauma on the part of this person. However, both peacemakers and peace dwellers are very important factors for conflict to be resolved. And we have them in every marriage. We have them in every marriage. Not all couples will be peace dwellers, not all will be peacemakers, but the two are important. We are not saying that any is more important than the other. Today, we look at the first key way. You know, we said we'll be bringing to you 6 new ways of overcoming painful conflicts in marriage. And we will be diving straight into these ways for want of time. The first new way we'll be looking at today is family dynamics. But before then, let's look at this powerful quote by Ronald Reagan. It says, peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the ability to handle conflict by peaceful means. So now that you know this, in addition with what the guest speaker says, he said it has to do with acceptance. Acceptance of your spouse, acceptance of yourself. And you know that peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the ability to handle this conflict in a peaceful way. Now that you know this, what are you deciding? What would you do differently as we dive in? The first new way I'm bringing your way this day is the family dynamics. And it is Henry Ford that said to us that coming together is the beginning. Coming together is the beginning. Follow this. Staying together is the process. And working together is the success. So success does not just happen because you got married. You need to come together, stay together, and walk the process to achieve success in every marriage. Marriage dynamics, as we have seen and we are looking at, is closely related to this quote to a large extent because it explains the dynamics of marriage, as every marital relationship goes through different phases. So simply putting it, marriage dynamics is the study of the forces operating in a marriage and its individual phases. It involves understanding the different behaviors of people in the marriage. the roles they occupy or the roles they've learned, and their decisions and problem-solving method. Every couple will move through these stages at different pace, different speed, irrespective of the number of years they've spent in marriage. And most people will experience each stage more than once. It is not sequential. It's commonly fluctuates from one stage to another. And that's to say that a couple can go from the first dynamics to the fourth and back to the second until they are able to gain stability quickly. You should keep this in mind as we proceed, that every marriage is designed to achieve a set of particular outcome. Every marriage is designed to achieve a set of particular outcome. So whether you know it or not, that remains the fact. Every marriage is designed to achieve a set of particular outcome. Now that we know this, why did you get married? That's the big question. Who are you satisfying? Why really did you get married? If you have never stopped to ponder over this question, it is something I want you to reflect on. And if possible, if you feel to share, you can drop it in the chat box for us. Why did you get married? It is one key thing that is fundamental to every progress in marriage. So some people marry for growth, some people marry to please God, some people marry for financial security, some people marry for procreation, some for sexual fulfillment, some because it's just the next thing to do, and some marry because of looks. They feel, oh, I've found that wonderful looks and I don't want to miss this person. Some marry because it is time and all their mates are getting married. They feel everybody is going. Some marry for companionship, for friendship, and the list goes on and on. What is your own reason for getting married? Why are you married? The first dynamics we'll look at under the family dynamics, which by the way is the first new way that we're bringing your way today, is dynamic one. Here, the individuals are often confused during this stage because their roles are unclear and they may or may not be a strong leader at this stage. They just got together. It is like a stage that I call the I know you, I love you phase. It is that phase before marriage that usually lasts for some people, maybe 2 months to some years, 2 years, a year, or even longer in some cases. It is the period of fantasy with little strain of reality or none at all. Rapport building and the search for leadership or power center begins to happen here. It is what we popularly call the courtship stage. That stage where you first met the person, and then there is a lot of rush of dopamine and everybody is excited and all that. So this is the first dynamics. What are the things we should expect in this dynamics? There's a lot of emotional rush, as I've mentioned earlier, confusion about the purpose, why they are together or why they want to be together. There's a lot of uncertainty. So it's that stage where they're saying, oh, check out the background. Have you investigated the family and all this and all that? There is little agreement and lots of enthusiasm with many more. These are the likely things we experience at this dynamic. And what are the requirements? I've told you from the beginning that this class is going to be very practical. I would love your engagement and appreciate it. So I am not here to just read scripts to you. So follow me on this. It is going to be problem, solution. And that's why I say get your notes. What are the requirements at this stage? We need to establish family and marriage ground rules. During this period, a lot of people just get carried away with so many things that are not even important with the marriage. But this is when they are supposed to be establishing the ground rules that will pivot them into a successful marriage. This is the time they need to get to know each other better, create balance, select a leader who provides strong direction and guidance. This is the time it should happen. And these are the things that should be happening at this stage. At Dynamics 2, as we would choose to go straight on, we have a whole lot to cover today. So I would be quick with it. Just follow me with it. Dynamics 2 says that at this dynamics, which is the second level in family dynamics, it is where you begin to realize that, oh, I am actually a human being. For some couples, and for some people, this is when they realize that they are truly married. In fact, a friend of mine called this stage the horror of horrors, because, you know, it's that time you go out maybe as a man, and then you just realize that, it's time to go home. I need to get back home. There's somebody home. You cannot just carry on with yourself like it does not have to do with any other person. At this dynamics, reality begins to down on the couples involved. By now, they are married and reality is dawning more and more. They gain clarity about the marriage, and your supposed superhero or super lady begins to unfold before you, and more disagreements begins to surface. You experience personality crashes, ego hurt, frictions in interpersonal relationships, an inability to accept leaders' power. The leader's power is always tousled at this time, and they are unable to accept it, thereby creating a conflict in the marriage. This is when you begin to feel, oh, I thought I know him. I thought I knew her, and all that continues. A lot of time, the reason for marriage or the lack of it is the main source. You remember I said, why did you get married? So a lot of time, the reason why you got married, or even the lack of it, is the main source of conflict in marriage. And it is not, whatever reason you have for getting married is not the issue. The problem, however, is when you have no reason for getting married. If these challenges are not attended to well, they cannot settle, and serious conflicts emanate from it. Some people do not solve these problems, and they go on to the next stage or the next dynamics, where they begin to do the real job of marriage. By then it gets complicated. Which is the next dynamics we'll be looking at? That's the dynamics where the real job of marriage takes place and things begin to fall apart. Also, this can be a positive experience for marriages if they are unable to achieve cohesion through resolution at this point. So it is not all negative, you know. I heard a story about a man who got married simply because he wanted to prove a point to the people around him that truly he can get married. Soon after their wedding, he was already tired of the marriage, and conflicts begin to arise. You can see in this case, his main reason, his why for marriage is to prove to people that he can get married. So for this category of people, his reason for marriage was fulfilled right on the wedding day. So he had no use for the marriage anymore, and he wanted out. So at this point, this couple cannot go on if they don't set another reason for marriage. What this couple should do at this stage is to create another intentional goal, which is empowering for their marriage. Otherwise, the marriage will not survive. Sorry to say that, but it is the fact the marriage will not survive. Except a new goal is created for this marriage, painful conflict is inevitable and ultimately leads to divorce. This is why we talk about marriage renewals. But unfortunately, lots of people are still ignorant as to the actual reason why marriage renewals are being done. They just see it as a gathering to eat and to party. But this is the sole reason for marriage renewals, to renew your why, to create another why, or to reinforce a why that is empowering you. That is the sole reason for marriage renewal. So what do we expect at this time? So like I said, there is conflict, the TOEFL battle, you know. TOEFL battle is simply that stage where you're struggling for territories, you know, the past struggle and all that. Another thing we should expect at this stage is increased clarity of purpose. I've mentioned past struggle already, and ideas are competing for purpose and voice at this stage. What should be done when all this is happening? You need a coach. You need a coach to survive it. Yeah, you hear people say, oh, don't tell people about your marriage, don't do this. But the actual thing, the right thing is, who are you speaking to? So you need a knowledgeable, that's the quote. It's not about speaking to someone. You need a knowledgeable and experienced professional, an expert, and that is where a coach comes in. You need a lot of listening to do on the part of the parties involved, and clarification, compromise, balance, leadership. Communication of feelings should be mastered at this point and made very, very active. You need to learn to communicate your feelings, and it should be mastered at this very, very point. So usually this is what marriage looks like. This is what people think the first 5 years of marriage is, because that's where this second dynamics is sitting, the first 5 years of marriage. So a lot of people think that, oh, this is what it looks like. It's all rosy and everything. But in the true sense, this is not what it looks like. The real picture, the actual picture, is that the first 5 years of marriage is the most taxing for most couple. Underline it, most. I did not say all. There are a few exceptions, but when majority takes the lead, we tend to summarize it by generalizing it. So most couples see it as the most taxing stage of marriage. Dynamics 3 of the family dynamics. At this dynamics, there is an increasing awareness of the individual differences as the couple begin to conflict. Their conflict becomes harder and harder to deal with, and they are most likely to pull away from each other, especially for couples who fail to resolve their differences. But as the differences begin to resolve, members develop mutual understanding. By members here, I am referring to the parties in the marriage. That's the husband and the wife. They develop mutual understanding and clarity with respect for each other. It is that stage where you begin to raise children, have plans for the future. And I like to call it the stage of I know you and you know me. That is the stage of reality, you know, and that is why I say this is where the real job of marriage happens. You can imagine if you did not treat issues from dynamics 2 and you carry it on to these dynamics, just imagine what will be happening at this time. There will be massive conflict, but for people who are able to resolve it, there is mutual understanding. There is an open invitation to exchange feelings and ideas, which result in acceptance. Our guest speaker mentioned acceptance as being foundational to a happy home. It involves the acceptance of each other's opinion. Unity and identity are developed at a social level, and the couple develop their own set of norms, and they try to abide by this norm. So they develop their own rules, not the rules that society requires of them, which is also a big mistake that we make in marriage. This stage is characterized by recognition of the individual differences and shared expectation. At this stage, you have gone past that stage of artificial harmony, which was happening at the initial dynamics. The couples who survive this time are victorious. Here, the parties know how to focus on their goal and how to arrive at it, and who is responsible for any individual task in the marriage. Recently in social media, there's this news making round town about a woman who threw a divorce party and was celebrating. A lot of people were saying all sort of things about it, but the one question to pause and answer is, what is her goal for marriage? Was her goal for marriage achieved? What if her goal for marriage was to gain financial stability and she already got that through divorce? And then you're here making noise. That's her goal for marriage and is achieved. That's not to say that it is empowering, but your ability to set your goal for marriage and know when to renew it is what creates a sustainable marriage. Truth is that there could be 1,001 reasons as to why she celebrated that. But that is not why we are here what we are here to discuss today, because I respect her choice. It is her life. This is the time when couples have to reinforce their reason for getting married. And you would agree with me that if you would need a lot of intervention to carry on if you don't do that. If you keep going without doing it, you will need a lot of intervention. What should we expect at this stage of marriage? There's agreement and concession, there's collective effort, there's results, developing trust, efficiency, and a clear imagined role and responsibility. These are the things that is expected at this stage. So it is important to know the things to expect. So when you are seeing it, you will know that it is something that is expected at this stage of my marriage. And what I need to do is to apply wisdom in handling it. What sort of wisdom can you then apply? And that is where the requirements come in. Dynamics 3, the requirement at this stage is training. You need training. You need lots of feedback from each other. But what we find is that people play the silent game and then it eats up their marriage. There should be frequent review of what works and what is not working in the marriage. There should be facilitation and redefinition. That is the renewal of the vow. Redefinition. If your why is not empowering you, you need to redefine it at this stage. Dynamics 4, this is the restful and the peaceful time, you know, compared to the other previous dynamics where things are a little turbulent and unstable. Things are more peaceful here. At this dynamic, some couple have built friendship, while some need reconciliation to do. Whereas some couple never make it to these dynamics. That's the funny thing. Some people never make it to these dynamics. So you find a lot of people at this stage. I am so lucky to have learned this when I did, because it's really, really helped me a lot. You know what? What I call my husband is a field marshal, my field marshal. And he would always say to me, you really did not answer me as though it were you. And that is because I learned these dynamics on time. So sometimes when we have our own share of conflict, because when people hear conflict, they tend to cringe as if it's something that is not normal. And that in itself is one of the foundational problems of marriage, because every marriage experiences conflict. But what you do is what determines if the conflict turns out to be painful. And what we are looking at here today is to handle the painful conflict. We are not here to take away conflict from marriage. Remember, peace is not the absence of conflict. So he would say to me, you did not speak as though it were you, because initially I would flare up, you know, and go on and on and on and all that. But recently, I have learned to accept myself, my spouse, with all his greatness and his flaws, and that have made us better. So whenever he said this, I would just laugh in Greek. And then, you know, marriage continues. Those couple who get here find out that they have a deeper feeling of love, connection, and trust for each other. They develop standards for running their home. They work on their interpersonal relationship as a solution to problem begins to emerge because they are handling things well. Their solution begins to emerge. That is what happens at this stage, where the couples do the right thing they ought to do, and constructive patterns that allows them to complete all their other tasks of marriage takes place here while relating with each other with flexibility. Though conflict still arises, but it is now being resolved through discussion that leads to innovative solutions, as the decisions are made through rational process of thinking that is focused on relevant goals rather than emotional. When you approach conflict from an emotional perspective, you tend to get it wrong. And that is why at the beginning, the guest speaker said, what is that one thing your partner, your spouse have been complaining about you? And what is that one thing you've been complaining? You will find out that when he said, what is that one thing you've been complaining about your spouse? We had so many chats. But when he asked, what is that one thing your spouse have been complaining about you? You know, people did not write. That is because most times we tend to see only the faults of others. And this in itself is foundational to conflict in marriage. So what should we expect at this level 4? Remember, we say things are peaceful at this stage. So there are lots of maturity, lots of acceptance, lots of focus on goal, lots of clear purpose. The couples are more clear as to why they are in marriage. Productivity is high at this stage. There is collaboration and efficiency at this stage. These are likely things we should expect at this stage. And then the requirements, because it is now restful, does not mean we should go and sleep, because marriage is a continuous work. The requirement at this stage is for those parties in marriage to learn to delegate. Who should do what, who should not do what, when your spouse is busy, how would you come in, how would you help out? And you learn also to plan for your future. That's not to say you don't plan for your future at the early stage, but at this dynamics, it is crucial and inevitable to learn how to plan for your future. So you need to foster open communication. So by foster, that's to tell you that it is there already. You need to continue. You need to foster open communication and trust with flexibility and recognition. It is important you recognize your partner's efforts in this journey of marriage. We move on to Dynamics 5. According to Relationship Institute, it has been estimated that fewer than 5% of couples actually make it to this dynamics. Fewer than 5% of couples make it to this dynamics. The key thing that happens in this dynamics could include acceptance, acceptance issue. That's the key thing that happened here. Transformation. So acceptance keeps coming up, and that's to tell you the importance in resolving conflict. Transformation and real love. This is that last dynamics where both parties, they've seen it all. They are clear on what they want for their marriage. There's a clear notion of who their partner is, their faults, their weaknesses, and their imperfections. Yet they make a conscious choice to be with the person, despite all that they know about this person. And in some cases, some people even stay with this person because of those flaws they found out, just to support the person. At this point, you are no longer with your partner because you need them, but because you have chosen, that's the key word there. You have chosen to be with them. You need to learn how to conduct yearly assessments at this point and plan for the new transition. That's the new year. For a most effective what? Marriage. That is what you should be doing at this stage. And looking at it from that perspective, you will agree with me that marriage is a continuous work. There is never a time you just now say, oh, we're done, and you go sleep. That is why you find out that sometimes you see some 30 years, 40 years, 50 years marriage, even breaking up. That was because they stopped working on their marriage. What should we expect at this stage? There's task completion, the good feeling about the marriage, and then a natural end for some, or a plan for a new goal. So the key requirements here are recognition, review, and reward. Recognition, review, and reward. I will quickly want to throw in this warning. It is vital that I add that all these years of marriage does not necessarily qualify people for these dynamics. Though it counts, but at any of this stage, if the right thing is not done, painful conflict will still arise. And that is why it is important that beyond solving any marital problem, the stage of marriage should be known, as you might be addressing a dynamics 4 problem, whereas you have a dynamics 1 and 2 problem that are untreated. Marriage is just like a university. So the wound will not heal. You cannot graduate at 400 level in a university with 100 level or a 200 level carryover. You cannot graduate. So I believe that you get the drift at this point because it explains itself. Each dynamics have work to do. Each dynamics have requirements. How do we address this marriage dynamics entirely, the 5 dynamics? How do we address it? We need awareness. These are the things we should be doing. There's awareness, create awareness, prospect for success, redefinition of your goals, repetition of what works, and recognition of your partner. Then you need to learn to reaffirm and reward each other. Reaffirm and reward each other. This is very, very important at this point. So there's a small grocery town, a story I heard, a small grocery town of a husband and a wife who in their shop, they keep delegating duties. So they will come, the husband will come and say to this employee, move these things to this point. And then the wife will resurface after the employee have done a lot of work, arranging all those things, to now say, oh no, bring it from that end to this end. So what do you think is the dynamics that is playing out here? Can somebody type in the chat box? I want to see if you're following. What do you think is the dynamics that is playing out here? What dynamics can you see? Hello, I hope I'm not speaking to myself.
You're not alone, you're doing great.
Okay. Okay, so this couple, the husband will give an instruction, say move things. He will give an instruction to the employees in their office to move some things to one end. And after a couple of hours, when the dynamics must have done this great work, the wife resurfaces to say, oh no, move it from that end to this end. The question is, what dynamics do you think is playing out here? I see some people, I see you, Victoria, I see you, Ifoma. Yeah, I see your comment, I see you, POA. What dynamics do you think is playing out here? And for those who have written, you are all correct. That shows you are with me on this journey. Dynamics 2, yes, there is a lot of power tussle. The wife cannot simply accept what the husband has said, even in the face of their employers. She still wants to prove herself that she has power to make or to give her own orders and instruction. So that brings us to the end of the first new way of conflict resolution. The second new way we'll quickly delve into is the personality clash. Personality clash. In conflict, being willing to change moves you from one point to another. Your ability to change moves you from point of view to viewing points. A higher, more expansive place from which you can see both sides, says Thomas Krum. So if you look at that, when you are at the viewing point, you are able to see clearly and know what is happening. Do not allow your wounds to transform you into who you are not. Never, never you allow your wounds. And why did I find that quote very interesting and relevant to today? Some people come into marriage with lots of wounds, but that is not what we're here to look at today. Wounds from their childhood and all that, leading to adverse destruction in their life. But Paulo Cole is saying to us, do not allow your wounds to transform you. This brings us to the personality clash, because not all personality that we come into marriage with are true representation of who we are. A lot of personality have been altered in the course of engineering. And even if not, you and your partner are two different human beings with different personality. And if not understood, clash is bound to happen. If you don't understand this, clash is bound to happen. Personality clash occurs when two or more people find themselves in conflict, not over a particular issue or incident, but due to the fundamental incapability in their personality. Their approach to things or their style of life. That is what leads to personality clash. And I will give you a brief rundown of personality so that you will understand how these personalities clash with themselves. So far, from your observation, what personality would you say that I am? What personality? You can describe it in your own word. Who would you say that I am? As I gave you a quick introduction of the different personalities that we are made up of, on your screen, you would see different car models. And I bring you this personality clash with the FSE model of representing personality clash using the car model. The first picture you will see by the top left is a picture of a vehicle called Hummer. And just as the name implies, this personality type are called the intimidating Hummer. If you have this type of personality, you are likely to be an extrovert, you have high work rate, you're likely to be very bossy, you're a self-lover, but can also be emotional. The good thing about this is that these are the group of people that personality types tell us that they are the choleric. And the good thing about it is that they are born leaders. You possess qualities like being active, dynamic, decisive, strong-willed, self-sufficient, independent. And you could also be easily discouraged, which is a downside for you. You are a person exuding lots of confidence, and you can run almost everything. Like you can run the show with no help. However, your negative trend can also affect you, such as that trend of being overly bossy, impatient, and the fact that you cannot relax. You are quick-tempered and argumentative. You can also be very, very unsympathetic and impulsive. They tend to be harsh, and they make rash and harsh decisions that could cut across as being very rude in the face of conflict. When you encounter an obstacle for this category of people, what they see is a challenge. So in the face of an obstacle, they see it as a challenge. And for them, any challenge is an opportunity. It is something to defeat. It is something to conquer. This is your choice of resolving problem if you are this personality type. So by now, you must have been categorizing some people you know, yourself or your spouse, under any of the personality. What is the way forward with someone of this personality type? Or if you are this personality type, you need to learn to relax. Take the pressure off others by planning for leisure activities. Learn to submit to leadership. Don't look down on others. Practice patience. Keep advice until you are asked, because you are always wanting to lord yourself over others. Tone down your approach and stop arguing or stirring up fights. Learn to apologize. Let someone else be right sometimes. You cannot know everything. So admit sometimes that you are at fault. That is one solution to this personality type. So the next personality I want us to be looking at is the red vehicle by your right, the top right. It is the personality type that we call the creative convertible. The creative convertible are also extroverted in nature. They are optimistic and they talk a whole lot. They talk a whole lot. Being talkative has its own advantages. You can easily lighten up a party, and then You are the life of a party and a good storyteller. You have a personality that is appealing. Many people will admire your sense of humor, cheerfulness, and enthusiasm. However, you can be easily distracted and unfocused. They love people and they don't hold grudges. The rendering apology comes very, very easy with them. And for their children love them so much because they are the type that can give children the horse ride and, you know, they lighten up the mood. So I have had a lot of people ask me, when it has to do with my children, don't you get jealous because they are so close to daddy? Because my field marshal is comfortably sitting here, you know, and my children tend to be more closer to him than I am relatively. That's how the world see it, but we don't see it that way. And people tend to ask me, oh, don't you get jealous about it? And my response is, hell no. And that's because we understand the role we play. So the tendency there is that they always tend to daddy because of his playful nature. And when we go out, there's a tendency that you will find them together and I alone. Well, I don't bother with that because when it comes to decision making, daddy still say, go ask your mommy. If mommy says yes, then you can have it. This is where the balance is created. And we should know that we complement each other in this. We are in marriage to bring in our different quarter. We are not in competition with each other. And if we realize this and cling on each other's strengths, then we will do better. We will do tremendously well. And I quickly want to say that I see that our time is fast spent, and our time is fast spent. So do you want to give me like maybe 15, 20 minutes more so that I tidy up things on this end to drive home? Hello?
Yes, carry on, please.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yes,
So,
go on.
thank you so much. So when there's an argument, this type of people tend to choose one side. It comes natural for them. They tend to choose one side. They are very, very forgetful. They could even forget their own birth date, which is also a source of conflict for me. So for my field marshal, he practically will not even remember his own birthday, not to remember mine or any anniversary. And then it will shock you to know that for 18 years, we have been on and on and on with that. But things are getting a whole lot of better. So what should we do? These people in this category should learn to relax. They should learn to submit to, they should learn to relax. They should learn to teach them with caution. They should learn to talk less. They should learn to stop exaggerating and focus, then pay more attention to other people because they tend to be absorbed in their own play. Quickly, systematic thought are the that's the third category of personality by the left. They are the creative type. They can be highly secretive. They are orderly. They love high standard and perfection. They are respectful, analytical, and thoughtful. Yeah, sometimes they can be emotionless. The most appropriate word for them is to call them thinkers. And they have a high tendency to be depressive and sad. They have tendency of being overly suspicious, critical, even to themselves. They are very difficult to please, though they still create lasting friendship because they are loyal type of people. So in terms of friendship, they are self-sacrificing. So you can see that this personality, they are willing to sacrifice for their children's well-being. Now you will understand why I cannot roll on the floor, but I am still a good mother. What is the solution for this personality group of people here? They need to learn to deal with moodiness and watch out for depressive signs. They need to look at the brighter side of life and relax on standard. Don't spend too much time planning. Learn to practice. Practice lots of self-compassion. The last personality here is what we call, look at it, it's just like a truck. They are the burden bearers. They carry the whole world problem on themselves. They are easygoing, peacemakers, comfort lovers, sympathetic, kind. However, you should be aware that negative emotions can destroy them. They are very indecisive and they can be selfish. They keep grudge, they are dishonest. So as parents, you need to give your children enough time if you are this type of person. You are not easily, they are not easily upset, and they tend to avoid conflict. They judge easily, they resist change. So these are people that, they avoid conflict because they don't want anything that will stress them or move them. They love their comforts. These are the category of people that need to learn to say no. They need to try to get enthusiastic with things around them, try something new, cast off laziness, motivate yourself, and learn to communicate your feelings. Learn to communicate your feelings, because a husband and a wife relationship is unique and difficult because it brings together two groups of people. Before committing into any relationship, it is important to acknowledge and understand every individual personality. There is no personality that is better than the other. That is one thing I want you to know. There is no personality that is better than the other. If the couple learn to accept, it keeps coming up. When they learn to accept and respect each other, they do better. So there is something we call pseudo personality. That is when people have personalities that are conflicting with each other, personalities that does not unite. When one person have personalities that are conflicting, and this pseudo personality come about as a result of our engineering. Remember, I mentioned something about coming into marriage with a default setting that have either altered your personality. A great marriage is when two perfect people, perfect people come together. It is when an imperfect couple learn to enjoy their differences. That is what a great marriage is. So the warning I want to throw in here before we move on to the third dynamics or the third new rule of marriage is to warn you that the knowledge of this personality is not for you to label your spouse or label yourself. It is for you to understand and be more empathetic, to support one another, because no personality is better than the other. No personality is better than the other. They all have their downside and their empowered side. So the third new dynamics I bring your way today is the boundary equation. Boundary equation, and we'll quickly look at this quote by Brian Brown. He said, daring to set boundary is about having the courage to love ourselves, even when we risk disappointing others. Even when we risk that disappointment, we need to move on. And this is another very powerful quote about conflict and marriage. This is another very powerful quote. So when there is a boundary in marriage, it helps a lot. Why boundary equation? Boundary equation is important because if we are able to set these boundaries in marriage, boundary equation is a gap balance. Together, a boundary equation is a gap balance together with a set of additional restriction or control where boundary conditions must be satisfied. That is what a boundary equation is. So we might wonder, why balance? Why boundary equation? Why do we need it really? It helps us to meet our need for less anger and resentment, to feel peaceful and safe, to have enough time and energy for other things. It helps us improve communication, less conflict, less anxiety, less stress, and it increases our confidence. Everyone deserves to be treated right and with respect. There are so many boundaries that needs to be observed in marriage, and this is the equation of boundary equation. It says the solution to initial value is equal to the boundary. This boundary is very important. The solution to whatever problem you're having is equal to the boundary you have set around that initial condition. That is what this equation is saying to us. The solution to every problem you have ever faced in marriage revolves around the boundary you have created. So we'll quickly look at the three different boundaries that we can, the three different types, not the boundaries, that we can set in marriage. We have the rigid, the porous, and the healthy boundary. These are the traits of the rigid boundary. They tend to avoid close relationship and intimacy. They are detached. It is difficult for them to ask for help. They are very strict and they avoid rejection. For the porous boundary, these people, it is difficult for them to say no. These are those parents that can hardly say no to their children. So the children can barge in and barge out at any time, regardless of if the parents are well dressed or if they are just naked in the room. The children can just barge in anytime. So these people are they love to please others and they are afraid of rejection and guilt. Then the healthy boundary trait, you find it in people who value their own opinion, people who would not compromise their value, people who relevantly and appropriately share information, and they feel comfortable accepting no. They are clear about their personal desires. Some healthy boundaries we can set in marriage. These are some of the healthy boundaries we can set in marriage. Emotional, financial, time and energy, mental boundaries, physical boundaries, spiritual and religious, and even sexual boundaries. These are some of the healthy boundaries that we need to set in marriage. So how can we now establish boundaries? How? You need to tune into your feelings and make a list of your core values. In making a list of your core values, note down your limits. Ask for what you want and mean it. Ask for what you want. Set consequences. Start small and build from there. Be assertive and direct in your communication. Say no firmly. Practice saying no and say yes because it is truly what you want, not because you want to please anybody. When you have done this, set your boundary and communicate them. Set your boundaries and communicate them. The fourth new value or the fourth new way is the expectation matrix. The fourth new way is the expectation matrix. And then it will advise you to know that in working with any couple, you need to know all of these new ways to do a good work with them. And that is why at Serenus Consults, we pay close attention to this. We don't just go the normal way. The new ways to conflict, resolving painful conflicts in marriage is vital to us because marriage have gone beyond theory. It is practical. And because people have failed to apply the practical solutions to marriage, conflicts in marriage keep multiplying all the way. These are some of the quotes that you can see around expectations because your disappointment is as big as your expectation. So what is expectation matrix? A matrix, this is a matrix that contains the actionable steps to overcoming unmet expectations and the desired elements of the matrix for meeting them. It is simply saying that high expectation, and when you take away observation from it, leads to frustration. This is one quote I share around there. It leads to frustration ultimately because unmet expectation is foundational to conflict resolution. What makes marriage feel like hell is our expectation that it should be conflict-free. Hence, a lack of preparation for conflict. That is the quote I have created. Acceptance is the soothing balm for expectation. Acceptance is the soothing balm for any expectation. When you learn to accept, then your expectations will be right. This is an expectation matrix created by Serenus Consults. We call it the SIP model, And you look at it, it's simply telling you to set and establish a unified goal, identify the real issues, plan and establish clear goals. Alongside these 5 key steps: safety, clarity, clear, respectful, responsible, and resourceful. At each of this stage, it is telling you what you need to focus on. As a couple, you might want to quickly take a screenshot of that, because for want of time, I would not explain it one after the other. But this model will help you solve your problems of unmet expectation. So quickly, let us talk about sexpectation, which is also an expectation in marriage that people tend to overlook or shy away from, but it causes lots of conflict. So yes, what is your expectation around sex in marriage? Do you know that you and your spouse will probably have different expectations about sex in marriage? Do you know that your expectation of how often you want to have sex would also change over the period of time you are in marriage? Communicating this with your spouse will go a long way to helping you. Communicate with your spouse how often you will love them to make love to you. See how often you want to compromise. You need to also compromise on the frequency. So because we're saying, oh, communicate this, does not mean you should go and start making grand rules around it. It is a decision that both of you will have to arrive at. So how can you now, what is the best way to communicate unmet expectation? How? I am more focused on the how. That is where the practicals lie. To communicate any unmet expectation in marriage, you have to practice this model, the sandwiched model. Learn to praise 1 or 2 good things about your spouse. So you start with the praise, and then you address that unmet expectation. Then you affirm your spouse again. So you could go, I love the wonderful things you do for the family. However, I would love you to come home more early, though I know you are working really hard to give the wonderful life to the children and I. When you have presented it this way, your spouse is bound to be receptive of it. The problem with marriage is unmet expectation. So this is one solid way that Serenus Consult is bringing your way on how to communicate your unmet expectation. The 5th new way of conflicts, resolving painful conflict, is what we call the communication blueprint. The communication blueprint, and we have some quotes around it. Elizabeth Bogarty says that communication is the lifeline. It is the lifeline of any relationship, marriage inclusive, of course. Communication blueprint, as it relates to marriage, is simply an agreed new set of strategy for communication among the couples, differently or closely related to their individual blueprints. Why did I say that? We all have a way we communicate, even before marriage. So before marriage, you already have a blueprint. But now, in marriage, you need to have a blueprint for communicating as a couple. So talking about communication in marriage, communication is the oxygen of every relationship. So conflict occurs in marriage, not because they happen ordinarily, but because 3 key things take place: the interaction, the communication, and the action. That is what actually happened. Now, once there is a challenge with any of this area, conflict is bound to happen. I have worked with people who achieved success by using this method to resolve conflict as their innovation to conflicts and to rise above it. They are more resourceful to help themselves, love themselves better, and make their family grow simply by creating their communication blueprint as a couple. Now, how do we begin to understand what communication blueprint is? How do we begin to understand that when marriage fails, at any point when marriage fails, communication is responsible? So says Joy A. Bingham. He says that communication is fundamental to any success or failure of marriage. So what are the communication points that determines a communication blueprint? To look at that first, we have to look at 3 levels of communication in marriage: communication before marriage, communication during marriage, and communication before the conflict in marriage. Communication before marriage, communication during marriage, and communication before the conflict in marriage. So before people got married, they have picked up a blueprint. And then this can be likened to their hidden rule book for communication. Now, different people came together from different kinds of family, different environments, different upbringing, and they unite together as couple. If they don't unify their blueprint, there is bound to be a clash. For example, I live in Lagos, and I believe most of you live in Lagos. In this part of Lagos, you can imagine a couple who is living in the part of Lagos where we call the Ajegule, coming together with another couple from the part of Lagos called Ikoyi. These 2 people came with 2 very diverse blueprints that is miles and miles away from each other. So for someone, one of them came with lots of value, their communication have lots of value, recognition, acknowledgement, and then influence. Whereas at the other end, someone came with a communication blueprint that involves shouting, lots of body language. You can imagine if a husband is speaking to the wife, is gesticulating so much that it looks as if there's a toggle of war. If these 2 people do not reconcile their communication blueprints, then there is bound to be conflict in that marriage. And these are some of the communication matrix division that leads to conflict in marriage. Those are simply those things that are comprised in communication that brings about division. We have the individual value, the body language, like I've highlighted in my story, the tonality, the tone we use, picking up of labels. You could be talking to your spouse and before you know what's happening, oh, so you're saying I'm stupid. Oh, you think I don't have sense. These are some of the communication matrix division that leads to conflict in marriage. Poorly justified belief is one of it, when you are not able to verify your facts and you work with assumptions. And also the individual style of communicating during conflict. How then can we design a healthy communication blueprint? These are some of it. Sit down, you can take a screenshot, sit down and fix the root cause. And these are some of the questions you should be asking your spouse. It is not in the sitting down. It is about what you are discussing while seated. These are some of the questions you should be answering and asking your spouse while seated to have this conversation so that you are able to get at the root cause of your conflict. The next thing you need to do is to understand the individual values of communication. What are your values of communication? I gave you an illustration of the people from Ajegule and Ikoyi. Some came with affection, values, influence, and some other came with shouting, yelling, body languages. So what is your value around communication? What do you believe around communication? Are you the type that believe that, okay, when I'm talking, you should not talk, you should listen, allow me go first? You need to both know your value of communication. Evaluate your beliefs, this value you're having, what is the belief that is around it, and what is the origin? Is it empowering you? Is it sustainable? Is it something you need to change? Now, let those past styles, your past styles of communication, be known to both of you. Jointly decide what is now the best way forward. Agree on how you want to lodge a complaint. Agree on how you want to lodge a complaint. At this point, I want to quickly simulate a scenario and I want someone to volunteer. I will stop my screen share and I want someone to volunteer at this stage while we simulate something. So what I want you to do, who is volunteering, please? I need one person to volunteer. Please, 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 and please. I need one person to volunteer so that we simulate this. What is your value? What I need you to do is to listen to this. Your value around communication, you pick it up. Let it be, do not be blunt. Do not butt in when I am speaking. That's your value. Please, who is volunteering? Nobody is speaking. Should we end? By now, I know you have gotten tremendous value. Should we end this? Should we come to an end? It appears as if I'm just speaking to myself. Hello, hello, hello. Can somebody
Hello,
so that I know I am not alone?
I am following. I have to mute my background to avoid them.
So I need one person to volunteer, please, 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 and please, so that we make this as practical as possible. One person, please, volunteer to join me in this simulation. So I just want you to pick up a communication value that says, do not butt in when I am speaking. Allow me to make my point. Who is volunteering, please? Hello. Hello. So nobody's volunteering. Okay. That means I will skip this. I will take it that you people don't want practicals. So let's keep telling the stories. I'd wanted to simulate a very, very practical situation here so that you see how communication values affect marriage, how our values around communication affect marriage.
We don't understand what we have to do.
So I just want one person to volunteer. One person to volunteer. And then what you have to do is to assume that your value, you are that spouse that when you are speaking, you don't want someone to interrupt you. You want to be heard. You want to finish what you're saying before your spouse speak. That's the value I want you to assume. Is someone volunteering or should we move on?
I am volunteering.
Okay, thank you. So Mr. Francis spoke first, so I think we should go with him. So you are that now. I want you to say something. This is your value. So I want you to tell me something. Assuming that you are I see it's Mr. Francis. So let me just play the role of your wife for the sake of this scenario. So you are saying something to me and you have this value that you don't like to be interrupted. You want to finish. So I want you to say something to me.
Okay. So yesterday night I was working and I saw you and I was expecting to come back by 8. What happened? You didn't return by 8 o'clock.
I didn't get that. You saw me yesterday night. Where? Where did you see me?
Let me finish, please.
I don't understand what you're saying. What do you mean by let me finish? So why can't I talk?
Hold on, you need to listen to me. Have you heard what I need to say?
Does it mean my own opinion does not count? Why can't you do the listening? Why must I be the one listening to you?
But I came to complain to you about something I don't like.
Okay. So that's just a short simulation we want to do there. You can all see how this leads to conflict in our marriage. So this couple now, if we're to continue with this, we go on and on and on. And before you know what is happening, this will result to something very massive that they cannot handle. That is just what I want you to see there, the way that our values play out in our communication blueprint. There is something that we do during interventions with clients. So we take them through that stage where they reflect, they think backward. At this particular stage, what we do is that we take them, they look at the things that caused conflict or a time in the past where they've been in a problematic situation. So we find out what they did to resolve the conflict. Because if you have done it before, you can still do it again. So you have to, at any time you see conflict arising, ask yourself, how have you handled conflict in the past? And just apply it. These are some of the ways that you can resolve conflict you can use communication to resolve conflicts. So communication during conflict is entirely different. One thing I like to do is to practice the switch over. I call it switch over and offer something light. So at this time, if I'm to go on with this, the right thing to do to diffuse this tension is to switch, not like ignore. Try to bring up an interesting subject. So recently, our son was to go back to school. And then, it was an issue of would he go back, would he not go back because of the COVID that just ended. So when I saw the tension rising, the quick thing to do there is to talk about something else. And I just debated and I said to my field marshal, I just mentioned our second son. Do you know that K got all A's in his results? And, that's a kind of quieting the argument. Though there will still be that, long face, but it diffuses it to the point that you are able to bring up something interesting. So you could say to your spouse, oh, don't I look beautiful? You've not said anything today. And that little laughter there can diffuse a lot of tension. Never, never, never you play the blame game. Learn to establish boundaries and, use best practices. Sit down and find out the root cause of your conflict. Always do that. It helps a whole lot so that you are able to focus on the problem, not the person. Communicate your feelings right at this time. Commit to resolving the conflict or the problem. Pay attention and listen when your spouse is speaking. Don't always be defensive. You cannot always be right. Learn to take actions. Be willing to forgive and find solutions. Above all, seek help. Seek help. A lot of people don't do this until they are choked. Learn to seek help. That is what the experts are there for. And this is one key solution we render. These are the 20 effective ways, the 20 C's of communication in marriage. And it is a lifetime saver. Consideration, control, coordination, consciousness, and the whole lot. It is a lifetime saver. So on a scale of 0 to 10, where do you lie? Where do you lie in your communication? On a scale of 0 to 10, where is your communication blueprint as a couple? It is one question you will need to answer with what you have learned today. Then the last but not the least, the last new way we are looking at today is for you to create a sense of team. Team sense transformation is key and fundamental to any marriage. The greatest marriage are built on teamwork, a mutual respect, a healthy dose of admiration, and never-ending portion of love and grace, says Paul Weaver. This helps a lot. And I always love to throw in a quote, right? So marriage relationship is strongest when you work as a team, protecting each other and standing for each other. This is my own quote. When you are able to protect each other and stand for each other, your marriage will work. Team sense is that process of turning two individuals into marriage, turning two individuals into marriage, into a cohesive team to meet their needs by accomplishing purpose and goal. That is simply what team sense is. How would you build a team sense in your marriage? Will be the next question. Have the conversation, make the plan at the beginning. At the beginning, remember your marriage dynamics. Make that plan at the beginning with both parties participating actively and positively. Show respect and stop the blame game. Build a shared sense of purpose and value. At this point, you need to ask yourself, what is your vision? What is your value? What is your mission? What is your legacy about marriage? Learn to communicate frequently. Always give 100% of yourself. Marriage is not 50-50. You don't need to bring a 50% of yourself and your husband bring a 50%. No, the equation of marriage does not work that way. It is 100% of yourself that is needed. A quick example, there's a client of mine that came in with lots of frustration and was at the verge of divorce. Her major challenge was that she's trying to address the dynamics of level 4, whereas because she assumed that she's in the 12th year of her marriage, and then that bonding should happen automatically. But during interaction and during the session, I found out that she had lots of dynamic 2 and dynamic 3 unresolved problems. You cannot graduate in the Institute of Marriage with this. So learn to support each other. Know the dynamics you are operating in. Bring 100% of yourself to the table so that you are able to do better. Set the right tone and expectation for feedback. This would help you in building team sense. Building team sense in your marriage, you need to find ways to support each other's life, goals, and dream. It is not supposed to be one-sided. Carefully listen and receive thoughtful feedback from your spouse. And these are the 5 key elements to team sense transformation in your marriage. Plan strategic identity, commitment and trust, mastery and modeling, communication and other skills, then legacy preservation. You need to preserve your legacy. It is not enough that it is going well. You need to preserve that legacy. It is very, very important. By the time you have done all this, say in the next 3 months, then you would notice that your marriage begins to change for good. But it is not because you have heard all what I'm saying today. It is about finding the right knowledgeable person who will guide you as you work this journey. You know, we have gone beyond that time when people would just say, oh, I don't want to tell anybody anything about my marriage. And that is why I am super excited about the number of people that showed up today for this webinar, because they will be transformed. You know, a lot of people are reaching out to me and they realize that some of their biggest and most problematic problem can be resolved just by getting the guide of someone in this process. The last week, there was a particular couple I worked with, and as their testimonial got in, I was so elated at the transformation they have reached and experienced in their journey. These are some building blocks for team sense. Vision is at the root of it all. These are some building blocks for team sense. So there must be a vision, a commitment, transparency, conviction. Resources. What are your resources? What are the skills you have, and what are the skills you need to gain? Involved leadership, continuous care, open communication, accountability, trust, and then ultimately, all this will lead to results. You are bound to gain results when you do all this. Are you currently a team with your spouse? Are you currently a team with your spouse? From all we've been saying today, it has to do with a lot of search. You know, you must have been seeing yourself in a particular category. What can you say? Are you a team with your spouse? Do you think you have some work to do? Marriage is all about building a team. Remember that every marriage was designed to achieve a purpose. Remember that every marriage was designed to achieve a purpose. So are you a team with your spouse? What skills are you lacking? What areas do you need to work on? Who do you need to work with? Whose support do you need? What new skills do you need to acquire? These are some of the questions that should be going through your mind now. What is your personality? In order not to have a personality clash, at what family dynamics are you currently operating in? What is your communication blueprint? And what are your expectation metrics? You need to outline all this to overcome painful conflict in marriage, because conflict is a part of marriage. Sadly, like my quotes say, we get married with the assumption, with the expectation that it should be conflict-free. And this in itself is the source of conflict in marriage, because we don't prepare for the conflict. So what really are you treating about conflict in your marriage? It is something you really, really, really need to evaluate. And that brings us to the end of today's session. I believe strongly that you have taken out something from this session, and I value your time and the fact that you stayed in all through with me. So quickly now, I would like to take your session. I would like to take questions. You can ask me and unmute yourself and ask me questions around anything I've talked about or any issue, anything you would want me to address. Interested, get the slides at the end of the webinar. Okay, usually it's not something we do in our practice, but because I have kept you longer than the agreed time, it is something I will do. Yes, so if you are interested, using the, I just dropped an email. I'll quickly drop that in the chat box again. You can reach out indicating your interest and you will get the slide. So I just dropped an email in the chat box for everybody to see. You can reach out and you will get these slides so that you take time to go through it once again. Yes, I'll give it out. Am I here alone?
Hello, good evening.
No, you're not alone.
You're not
Okay.
alone.
I was almost scared, so scared, you know. I thought that you've all left me desolate. So I'm glad you're here with me. Questions. Or takeaway. What are your comments? What are your takeaways? So you might not have a question. What was this impactful? Was it worth your time?
I have a question.
Yes, please. More yes.
Okay. My name is Abimbola Nkepa. I'm a counselor as well.
Okay.
There are times that you come across some couples that most of their spouses are just unrepentant. You know, as adults, it's usually very difficult for us to change our ways. Even if the wife is trying to change, the husband may also be set in his ways. The husband may try to change, but the wife is set in her ways. Now, when you have issues like this, from what you have taught us, I think it's called a personality clash or something.
Mm-hmm.
How do you resolve such conflicts? The wife set in her way, the husband set in his way, and as adults, it's most times very difficult. So I don't know whether there is a way out that one could, resolve such issue in marriage?
Okay, thank you so much for that question. I am super excited you brought it up. You know, in this, and I'm also excited you are a counselor. In this work that we do, it is fundamental to let the parties involved to know that change is constant. Education is important. And if you've listened in all through, you must have heard me say that the guide of an expert, a coach, is super, super important in this journey. So when you're working with such people, what you need to do is to educate them on their different personalities. That was why I had a quick rundown on the personalities. You know, I just had a brief. It's more expansive than that, but this session really cannot handle all that. So I just had a brief rundown on it before I present the personality clash. So what you'll be doing with such couple is to let's bring to their awareness their individual personality and their characteristics. Also letting them know that the knowledge of it should not box them. It's not enough to now say, oh, my husband is the very bossy one, so he should now just go around and boss everybody around. No, the bossy one should understand that he or she needs to be humanistic at some point. Because if you claim that you're bossy, okay, why can't you stand on the high street of Lagos and give a soldier a slap? At least you should exhibit your bossiness there. So if you wouldn't do that, why should you do it with your spouse? It boils down to emotional control, emotional intelligence. And that is the next phase you need to take them on. But sadly, I cannot really explain all that. There is a stage to it. You explain their individual personality. You let them know why it shouldn't box them and what they should do to rise above it. When you expound their awareness, they are more receptive of change. When you expound their awareness. So you take them through the journey of grooming their emotional intelligence so that they are more able to handle their disempowering states in order to open up more to their spouse. I believe I must have touched on that question and addressed it. Abimbola, does that answer your question?
Yes, you did. Thank you so very much.
You're welcome.
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And that leads me to another one. That's my second question now. Yes, I'm sorry. There are some people, that maybe it's one of the spouses that is trying to come for counseling. The husband is a very naughty one, or the wife is a very naughty one, and they don't believe they need counseling. I met one like that a few months ago. The wife so she did a voice recording of the conversation, trying to tell the husband that they needed to see a counselor. And the man was telling her that, no, I don't need one. I don't need anyone. You don't need anyone. We were okay. And every opportunity he has, he lashes out at this lady, beats her up and all, starts her up, so many things, So how do you, because sometimes it's just so, life is just not fair. The wife is struggling to make sure that they get together and talk and meet a counselor. But the husband is so adamant. Still, I'm speaking with you. He still doesn't think he needs a counselor. So the wife is trying to move out of the marriage. And I'm like, your last one is just 2 years. You can still get to talk to him. So how now would someone like me be able to approach the man who doesn't even want to hear of anything counseling or any counselor at all? How would one get across to such a human being?
Okay. A quick one at that, seeing that we've spent so much time, and I really, really apologize for it, but let me address for this question. The truth about helping couples rise above painful conflicts in marriage is that they must be willing. You cannot force change or counseling on someone that is unwilling. In fact, unwillingness is the greatest problem of conflict resolution. So in our practice, what we do with such people is that we work with the person who has presented him or herself for counseling. Because you cannot work on someone you've not seen. So like the guest speaker said, when you empower the client you are working with, your clients will bring about change in their spouse in a subliminal way, in a very subtle way. So you make this person even accept themselves, learn to accept their spouse, expound their awareness. So when that change has occurred with them, gradually it will influence their partner. That is how to work with such people, because you cannot cancel an absent spouse. Does that answer your question? Hello, Abimbola. Did we lose her? Hello? Okay, so I guess we lost her there. So I know I'm not alone.
So, all right, so for me, I just want to thank you for dishing out so much value today. In fact, like it's so much value. That's just what I can say. I am going to try to let it sink in. So I must commend you for a job well done, and we are so excited for everything that you shared. So I don't have a question, but I just wanted to share my takeaway. I think what really struck me was the fact, was when the guest speaker asked us, what would is there anything in your spouse that you would like to change? And then we were very, very fast, quick at it. And then when the tables were now turned, we were now sluggish. And then he went on to talk about acceptance. For me, that stood out, because sometimes we do not take time to accept our spouses. We do not take time to accept the next person, to just understand who they are. It's about us. It's about us. Most of the times we tend to be selfish. So for me, that really struck me. And it is going to help me even as a coach. It's going to help me also in my relationship with people, to learn to accept the people first. If we can accept them, we will have some level of empathy towards them. So that was what stood out for me. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you also for listening in and taking away something. Thank you so much for your kind words. So do we have any other question, or should we call it a wrap? Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you. It was a wonderful session and all that. I see you, Chichi. I see you, Chinyere. I see you, Prince. I see you all. Thank you. And it has been a very, very interesting evening. Without your presence here, I wouldn't have done it. I see you, Ada Samuel. I see you, POA. Thank you so much for honoring this and for taking the decision to come and learn something new that will skyrocket either your marriage or your practice. I see you, Ifoma. I see you, Victoria. I see you all. I see you, Ndu. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. And I celebrate your greatness. With that, we come to the end of this evening. Do have a wonderful and a fantastic night rest. Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Bye. Bye. Thank you. Bye. Why we take our leave? Bye. Let's enjoy this song again.